How's it going, everybody? It feels like it has been forever since we've met, and so I hope you guys are enjoying time with each other. Hopefully you are actually watching this video and not just spending time with each other. But it's a new year, which is exciting for a lot of people. We wanted to kiss 2020 goodbye, and some of you probably are beginning to maybe set some goals. Maybe you actually have a New Year's resolution, so do this. Pause this video right now and tell someone one of the things that you're going to try to accomplish in 2021. So last year was kind of interesting, but regardless of how you feel about 2020, a lot of people accomplished some pretty amazing things. Like there were championships won, world records set, there was new movies that were released that you could just watch from your home, even though it's not as good as a movie theater with all the buttery popcorn and drinks and leather recliners and all that. There were best-selling books, there were singles that came out for music that were incredible, and it makes me wonder for a second, how many of those were maybe like a goal in 2019 or a goal in 2018 and it finally came together in 2020? How many of those were actually maybe goals at the beginning of 2020? Have you ever set a goal though, and all of a sudden it got interrupted or sidetracked because that stuff happens? Or maybe you just got lazy with it and you kind of let it just fall to the wayside. Maybe you lost focus or something else maybe took priority. Maybe you just got stuck and you just know how to take the next step. I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, for whatever reason, the cello I thought was the coolest thing. Yes, you can laugh and make fun of me if you want to, but I just loved how it sounded. I loved just every part of it. Maybe thought it might get me some ladies. That was probably part of it, but who knows? The cello, I don't know. It sounds dumb now that I say it out loud. But anyway, I can remember like telling my friends, hey, I'm gonna learn the cello, and they're like, okay. And I kept saying it, and guess what? It never happened. I never bought a cello because I couldn't find one that was cheap enough, etc. The list of excuses goes on and on. And in case you're wondering, we're talking about goals. We're starting a new series this week called Goals, and how are we gonna set and achieve big goals? So like maybe for you, a goal for you would be to raise your grades or learn a new instrument or a new skill, get accepted to college, get a job, get healthier, maybe get TikTok famous. There's a ton of goals. But if I were to ask you about your goals, I'm guessing some of you would be able to share them immediately. I'm going to do this, and this. But some of you might have to sit there and think for a while. And some of you, you're like, I don't even have any goals. You're not there yet. And that's okay. At your age, it's normal to feel like you're struggling to set or achieve goals. Maybe you're trying to just figure out who you are still and what you want to become. Maybe for you, it's you can't think beyond right now. You're in the midst of something and you like, I can't even think about the future right now. I'm stuck right here. Maybe for you, it's hard to get disciplined or stay disciplined about pursuing a goal. Maybe you don't have total independence or control over your life at this time. But even if you're setting or achieving goals can be difficult at your age, I'm convinced that you have the ability to change the world. Not someday, but today. And I think it all starts with the goals that you set. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause this video, just take a couple minutes, pull out your phone, maybe a note on your phone. If you got some note cards or paper or pencil, that's fine too. Or maybe just say it out loud or think about it in your head. But what I want you to do is, I want you to set a goal. Like I want you to stop right now and set a goal. And it doesn't have to be huge, it can be small, it can be anything. But I want you to just pause this right now, and I want you to write down one goal that you have in mind right now. So pause this video. So maybe it's something you want to accomplish. Maybe it's something you want to become. Maybe it's something you want to contribute to the world. But at the end of the time, I'm going to ask you to reflect on the goal that you just wrote down and either change it add to it or make it more specific. But for right now, what I want you to do is just have that in mind with what you wrote. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about questions like, what goals should I have for my life? What goals, what do my goals have to do with God's goals, and how can I achieve my goals? And to do that, we're going to introduce you to this guy in Scripture who had big goals of his own, and we can see what we can learn from him. And so for us to jump in tonight, let me give you a little background. We're going to be looking at a book in the Old Testament of the Bible, and it's part of the Bible that was written before Jesus, and it's a story about the Jewish people. And the book we're reading is called Nehemiah, and guess who wrote it? You're right, Nehemiah, a guy named Nehemiah. About 140 years before this book begins, the Jewish people get conquered by an enemy. They take control of Jerusalem, they burn everything down, they tear the walls down, they destroy the city. The temple where the Jewish people worship and was destroyed, and most of them got sent into exile. And through the prophets, though, God promised that one day he was going to restore and build Jerusalem, that God's people would return. But man, this was a devastating loss for the Jewish people. And could you imagine being in that situation? You get invaded by a group of people, you get kicked out of your home, you lose friends, family members. If you survived, you got to learn a new language, you got to learn new laws, new customs of the people who took you over. For generations, Jewish people were heartbroken about their city, their temple, their culture, and their community, how it was lost. And after Jerusalem was destroyed, a new king took control, and some of God's people began to return to Jerusalem, looking for ways to rebuild what they once had lost. But it was a long process. Like I said, like 140 years after Jerusalem was destroyed, this is where the story of Nehemiah begins. Nehemiah had only known a Jerusalem occupied by enemy armies. Nehemiah was passionate about seeing Jerusalem rebuilt and restored, but he wasn't just anyone. He was actually a person in the government of the new king. He was a cupbearer for the king of Persia. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause this video. I want you to read Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 1 through 11, and then chapter 2, 1 through 5. So chapter 1 is only 11 verses, so don't worry. And then so chapter 1 through chapter 2 of verse 5. Pause this video right now and read it. So as you can see, Nehemiah had a big goal. He had a big goal, and it was inspired by a big problem. Nehemiah already knew that Jerusalem had been destroyed. That was old news. But he realized and heard that the Jewish people were returning and the walls were still in shambles. So Nehemiah saw a problem. He wanted to see the whole nation of Israel return back to God. So he set a God-sized goal. He wanted to find a way to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem so God's people would be protected and God would be honored. So Jerusalem troubles birthed in Nehemiah a goal that wouldn't just benefit himself, but it would serve the people and also God as well. See, Nehemiah's goal began with difficulty. Nehemiah didn't set this goal because he needed a New Year's resolution. He set it because he saw a problem and he wanted to make an impact. And when Nehemiah identified the problem that needed to be solved, he grieved and he wept over it. And see, solving this problem for him wasn't just a hobby. Like, it meant something to him. He was invested. He took ownership to it. Not only did it begin with difficulty, his goal began with prayer. As Nehemiah wept, he also fasted and he also prayed. He knew his goal was so big that he couldn't do it on his own. He needed God to accomplish that. Before he made a single move, he asked God for wisdom, for guidance, and for help. And then he kept praying and fasting for months until he kept going. His goal also began with God's help. Nehemiah stood up from his prayer and fasting, determined to attempt a series of impossible tasks. He knew his own wisdom experience wasn't enough to grant him success, so he asked for God's help. See, the size of this goal forced Nehemiah to put all of his faith in a God who could do what Nehemiah couldn't. So the book of Nehemiah begins with destruction, loss, grief, tears, but that is not where the story is going to end. See, when Nehemiah heard the news about Jerusalem's crumbling walls, he discovered an important truth. Big difficulties can inspire God-sized goals. Big difficulties can inspire God-sized goals. So why are we talking about this guy from like 2,500 years ago? What do he and his walls have to do with anything that you and I are walking through or going through today? But I think there's so much to say about the story of Nehemiah. Countless books have been written on it. His story can teach us about wisdom, leadership, vision. And over the next few weeks, we're going to see what we can learn from him, from setting and achieving goals, but not just any goals, God-sized goals. So you remember that goal you wrote down earlier, maybe just a few minutes ago. Let's take a look at that one more time. So pull it up on your phone, bring it back from the back of your head, your memory. So how does your goal compare to Nehemiah's goal? Now, it might not be building a wall, but think of the impact and think of the size of his goal. How does it compare to your goal? And maybe answer these questions in your head. Is your goal inspired by a big difficulty? Like, does it solve a problem for you? Does it solve a problem that impacts others, anyone other than you? Is it a goal mostly about what you can gain? Is your goal inspired by prayer? Is this a goal you want for yourself, or is it a goal that God wants for you too? Have you ever even talked to God about the goal that you wrote down? Do you need God's help to accomplish this goal? That's a usually good indication of whether or not your goal is big enough. If you're pretty sure you can accomplish the goal, it's a you-sized goal. A God-sized goal is a goal that seems likely impossible, where you have to really rely on Him. Now, I know the question, what are my goals for life, can be scary, intimidating, frustrating, all the things. But instead of waiting around for inspiration or cues, what if you, like Nehemiah, looked around at the problems that need to be solved and chose one of those to set a goal? Whether those problems impact you, whether they impact others, whether they impact the whole world, one thing I know to be true: big difficulties can inspire God-sized goals. So I want to challenge you over the next few weeks as we talk about this, as you wrestle with goals and setting goals. I want you to think big. I want you to ask God to help you understand what He has in store for you and the goals that He wants to accomplish through you. So I hope you have some good time talking in small groups, and we'll see you guys next week.